Good morning, everybody. As we go to the Chitas of today, we're holding in the second reading of the portion of Korach. We're holding in the book of Numbers, chapter 16, verse 24, verse 14. V'yaf lei el eretz zavas chalav v'dvash hevisanu. And also you have not brought us to a land that is flowing of milk and honey. This is what Dasan and Aviram are telling Moshe to send a message to Moshe Rabbeinu. You haven't even brought us to the land of Egypt. To give us an inheritance of a field and a vineyard. Even if you gouge out the eyes of those people, we will not go up. She says, and you have not given us, this refers to loy, not refer to meaning you have not brought us, nor have you given us an inheritance of fields and vineyards. You to us, I will bring you up from a land of affliction to a land of milk and honey. You brought us out there, but did you bring us to the land of flowing of milk and honey? On the contrary, you decreed death upon us, causing us to die in the desert, saying us, your corpse will fall in the desert. So this is what you accomplished. Aina anoshim titnake means even if you send someone to gouge out our eyes, if it were not to go up, we will not go up. Anoshim ahem, what means those men? He's talking about themselves. So this is the way he's referring to themselves. This is the way they refer to themselves. That even though they're talking about somebody else, they say they're talking about themselves, but they say it on the third, speak on the third person. And Moshe became exceedingly distressed. And he said to God, don't regard their offering. I've never taken even a donkey for them. I have not harmed a single one of these people. Now she says, it's time mode. Over here, so Vayicha, it came like he's angry, but over here, Rashi translated it means that he became distressed, tsar, his own pain. Al-Tafan Mechasan, according to the context, meaning that the incense that they are offering before you tomorrow, do not pay any attention to them, but even considering a sacrificial right or by the forbidden one. The Medrash says, I know that they have a portion of daily communal sacrifice. Let even their portion not be accepted before you favorably. Let the fire leave it alone and not consume it. Means no donkey belonged to any of them that I take. Even when I travel from Midian to Egypt, on the behalf of them, and mounted my wife and children on a donkey, I could have claimed reimbursement for the donkey. I came down to Mitzrayim for you. So you should pay for my travels. Nevertheless, use my own donkey, my own funds. Uncle is translated in Asasi is shachris in Aramaic, service imposed by a king, shachvar. So in Asasi, I didn't in the morning. You and your entire congregation must present themselves, come before God. You want the kahuna, will come before the Eibishter. You're 100% right that if you want it, if God wants you, you'll get it. Come tomorrow morning, and God will decide. Verse 17, and let each man take his fire pan. The satablank potatoes, you'll put upon the potatoes. The ketaitel from Hashem will bring an offering and will bring an incense offering for God. Each person will have their pen. Hamisha Mishlayim Machtas, 250 pens. Ata va'arein ish machtase. And Aaron also will have his pen. She says the 250 men among you. Ish machtase, and each man took his pen. And he put upon a fire, and he put upon it incense. Vayamdu Pesach ha'el, And they stood before the tent of meeting, Moshe and Aaron, together with Moshe and Aaron. And the Kairach's assembly and all the congregation against, instead of the tent of meeting, and the glory of God which came upon our entire congregation. Asher's Kairach assembled all the congregation against them through mocking words. The whole night he circulated amongst the tribe and enticed them to join him, saying, "Do you think that I'm resentful for myself alone? You think I'm fighting for myself? I'm fighting for you. I'm resentful for all of your sake. For these men came and took the high office. For himself, Moshe took kingship, and his brother took priesthood, until they were persuaded and he persuaded the Jews to come. And the glory of God appeared, and appeared in the cloud, in the pillar of cloud. Right in the center of the drama. But here ends the Chumash for today. We now go to the Tanya of the day. We continue in the chapter 8 of Tanya, Shara Yichud Ve'emunah, in the portal of faith and unity, which the Alter Rebbe has explained. They go together. What the Jewish Emunah of a Yid is in the unity of God. And we have to understand that. We have to understand the unity of God, what means the unity of the Eibishter. So the Alter Rebbe continues. First attribute, Arizal. The first attribute, Arizal, the Rambam, Kabbalah, says what is the first attribute of Sfiris is Chachma, wisdom. That's why Reishis Chachma. It's called the concept of Reishis. Targum Yonason interprets Bereishis in the beginning to mean Bechachma, with wisdom. That's also Rashi says. Two Reishis. Reishis, two beginnings. Bereishis. Two beginnings. The beginning of Torah, the beginning is Chachma, and the beginning is Yisrael. So Reishis is Chachma. Wisdom. Thus, wisdom is connotates with that which is first in quality. And not only that, it's the source of everything. It's indeed the beginning, and it's the fountainhead of all life force, of all creation. Because when wisdom comes about, the concept of bina, of understanding, and das, of knowledge. And from them, Chachma, bina, and das flows all the other emotions, which is all in this rational soul. The concept of love, and chesed, and kindness, and mercy, and all the like. So all of these, your chesed, my ava, and my rachamim, all comes about through the concept of my wisdom. As it's seen vividly. Shakos and sheim by das, a child that doesn't have das, wisdom, he doesn't have really das knowledge, who bekas tomid v'achzori. He always gets angry easily, and he's unkind. A child is very selfish. And also even his love, is for small things. Like candy. So he has love for stupid, for nanish things that shouldn't have love for. But that's a child because he doesn't have das. They doesn't understand. He doesn't comprehend. They should love things that he should love, things that are fit to love. Because ultimately love varies according to one's understanding. Thus, the emotions are dependent on the intellect and understanding in so much that they derive from them. And from the emotive attribute of the soul, also comes about. It goes backwards and forwards. Because from the emotions, the person also thinks. He also, words and letters of thought issue forth. So it goes from the intellect to the emotion, from the emotion back to machshava. The soul thinks of which he loves, or how to accomplish his love and his chesed and his mercy. And likewise, all the other motive attributes, they all serve as a source also for words and letters of thought. And within every thought in the world, there's clothed some emotive attribute that causes one to think that thought. So ultimately, the midah, the attribute, is the force of that thought, and that's why it's important also midas, because ultimately the way I have a midah, that's the way I'm going to think. The way my character is going to be, that's going to push me in that direction. So according to my characteristics, is going to be the way I also think. And from the letters of my thought, come out the words of words, actual words. And they are the actual force of the words. That's why you can see, in a way a person talks, the way he feels, because he usually talks with a certain passion, in a certain kind of a way. And therefore you could say something, and you can see the emotions in the person that is saying and what he's saying. As the Rebbe will many times say, it's a tutvei shreitman, that when it's something is painful, so you express yourself in a painful way. So you can see the pain of what he's saying, because that was the midah, that was the emotions that he put into his machshava, and ultimately into his dibur. And ultimately speech, comes out the action. Tzedakah, whether it's charity, whether it's kindness. The example of a king who orders his servants to give charity. So the servants follow the directive of the king. So his speech causes charitable thought and result in action. So you have also the concept of a teacher and a student, the same thing. So the teacher awakens the emotions in the student, as the king awakens the emotions in the subject to do what he wants, what he's set to do. The gam kishadam so to even one man himself, he doesn't have a king, he doesn't have a teacher, but he influences himself to do something which he thought of doing. So in this instance, no speech is involved. His thought leads directly to action. So sometimes you have that kind of, usually it's machshava, dibur, maisa, thought, speech, and action. But here you can have a concept of thought and action that goes straight from thought straight to action. Nevertheless, the Alter Rebbe goes on to say here too, in order for the life force to descend from thought to action, it must pass through the intermediate stage of resemble speech, because in your thought you have speech. So even though you might think you only do it with your thought, no, because you think with speech. The power of the soul, that of the life force, which clothes itself in this deed, is absolutely nothing in relation to the power of soul life force, which clothes itself in the speech of man. That which is each way in the relation, comparison of the body to the soul. Everything, as it says, everything to the higher is the kayach, and everything that lower is the vessel, the oir and kli. So machshava to dibur is like a oir to the vessel, and dibur to maisa is again the same thing, is like an oir to a vessel. So that to the same degree, there's no corresponding between the power of the soul and its life force, which clothed within itself in speech of man. The power of the soul and its life force which clothed itself in man's action. Therefore, when the power and life force are descended so far that is able to clothe itself in action, it's already undergoing contraction and condensation, which is far below the power of speech. So therefore, ultimately, action to speech is a far of action to speech. That's why I say speech is easy. That's why the Mishnah says, speak a little and do a lot. Because from the concept of speech to action is a great contraction. And the concept from speech to the thought of speech is even a greater contraction. The concept of the thought of speech to chachma is even a greater contraction. So ultimately, you see the Seder Shtalshlus by a human person himself, from his chachma to his midas, back to his machshava, back to his dibur, ultimately to his action. As Alter Rebbe says, likewise, the distance to the body of the soul is the relation to the letter of speech, to the letter of thought, the letters of thought. And then likewise, the relation of the letter of thought to the essence of the emotion that pushes that thought, that gives life to that thought. That gives it its life. Clothes itself in this thought, and it gives it its life. Meaning, the thought that derived from the emotion is in no way compatible to the emotion itself. Now we go, where did the emotion come from? And then you can imagine the difference between the midah, the emotion, to wisdom. Chachma bina das, to the chachma. That everything came, even the midah ultimately came from the seichel, which this midah came from. So we thus see that the chain of descent from level to level, beginning with wisdom, culminating with action, each level bears no comparison at all to the level that immediately precedes it. It's like an ayim yesh, almost like. It's like something for nothing. The emotion cannot be compared to the intellect. Thought cannot be compared to emotion, and so on. Surely then, there can be no comparison between the lowest degree of action to the highest degree of wisdom. So therefore you realize how far, even though it could take a second, but how far it is, chachma, wisdom, to the concept of action is a whole seder shtalshlus within my own chachma, within my own wisdom. To the concept of my action is a whole chain of events. It's a whole situation that's happening, and there's no reality between ultimately my wisdom and my action. And sometimes it's very hard to see the wisdom in the action, even though the action contains within him the true concept of the wisdom. So ultimately, if it's done correctly, in this action is the wisdom. Hopefully. Kulam b'chachma sisa. That's where the Eibishter, everything, we say, the verse says, the Eibishter made everything in chachma, because in his action is the wisdom. Right? I have to find it, but in the action is the wisdom. And sometimes by human being, he also can have that in his action, you can see the wisdom. You can see the chachma of the person. And all this applies to the soul of man. And so too to the soul of all created beings. All of the worlds, from the upper to the lower, is all within it, the chachma of the Eibishter. Even though it's sometimes hard to see, but it's really all within it. Kulam b'chachma sisa. Everything was created with the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with the wisdom of God, and everything has within it, even the stone that is inanimate object, has within it the chachma of the Eibishter. And Self-Sudal Rebbe wants to bring about the concept that we should realize, if the chachma of the Eibishter of Atzilus is in the stone, then Oid Ein Sof Baruch Hu is in this stone. That's the point. Is Oid Ein Sof is the infinite light of God in this stone, because Chachma of Atzilus is totally one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore in this stone is Oid Ein Sof Baruch Hu. Shekulam b'Chachma hi reishis u'makar ha'chalachayis, because Chachma is the beginning of the source and life force of all creation. Chachma of the world of Atzilus is the life force of all creation, according to Kabbalah, according to Chassidus, according to Torah, and therefore, Chachma Vatzilis, that is totally united with Ohr Ein Sof, is in this stone. And to the person himself to realize is in this person. So God, however, as we'll soon conclude, is a distant degree from the wisdom, as he is from that of the action. By the Eibishter Chachma Vatzilis, and the stone, the action of the stone, are all equal. Because both Chachma Vatzilis is a creation, and both the stone is a creation. So they're all totally bottle, nothing. Chachma Vatzilis, the most highest levels of spirituality, and the stone are all to the Eibishter nothing, because he created them all. And they're all equally distant from God. Chachma Vatzilis is distant from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as this stone is distant from God. The only difference between the Chachma, the will of Atzilus, and the stone is that in Atzilus is revelation of God. Well, on the stone, you cannot see that revelation. But in Atzilus, they can see. In the Olam Atzilus, they feel that revelation of the Eibush. It's all, again, as Alter Rebbe says, it's about revelation, not about the concept of God. To God, he is not hidden, not in the world of Atzilus, and not in this stone. Eibishter, there's no contraction, there's no aspect of something that is hidden from him or something that is contracted from him. By God, the stone and Atzilus are equal. And that completes the Tanya of the day, my dear friends. Today is the 27th day of the month. Yes, today is the 27th day of the month, which is chapter 120 to chapter 134. If by mistake you said yesterday the 27th day of the month, say it again, and say the 26th day of the month also. The Rebbe writes today in Ayom Yom for the 27th day of Sivan. God will bless you in whatever you do. That's the verse. A verse in Book of Devarim. The Eibishter will bless you whatever you do. Man needs but to make a receptacle for his livelihood, and to endeavor with all his power that this receptacle, this vessel, be pure of any impurity or dross, of cheating others and the like. A person needs to do his avodah, and he needs to do it be'emunah. He needs to do it with faith and trust. And he needs to do it legally, as the Rebbe say. No, unlegal. They should never do things illegal. Everything should be legal. Legal al pi halacha, according to the laws of Torah, legal according to the laws of the land. Thus, he becomes a vessel worthy of God's blessings in two ways. His livelihood will be ample, and his earnings will be directed to desirable ends. And God bless you all. I wish you a wonderful and beautiful day. And amid Shem, we'll see you all tomorrow at 8 a.m. We'll continue the Chitas of the day.